The United States has killed Iranian General Qasem Soleimani.
Donald Trump ordered the attack that killed Qasem Soleimani.
अमेरिका ने बगदाद में एक फ़ज़ाई हमला करके ईरान के आला फौजी जनरल कासिम सुलेमानी को हलाक कर दिया है.
Qasem Soleimani, the mastermind behind the Iranian military strategy abroad and the commander of the elite Quds Force branch of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Quds Force, is dead. The U.S. says the drone strikes targeted Soleimani's convoy as he was leaving the Baghdad International Airport.
Last night, at my direction, the United States military successfully executed a flawless precision strike that killed the #1 terrorist anywhere in the world, Qasem Soleimani. Soleimani has been perpetrating acts of terror to destabilize the Middle East for the last 20 years.
This morning, Iran's master terrorist is dead. The architect and chief engineer for the world's most active state sponsor of terrorism has been removed from the battlefield at the hand of the United States military. No man alive was more directly responsible for the deaths of more American service members than Qasem Soleimani.
He's been called a monster, and he was a monster.
But even many of Soleimani's enemies admitted he was a military genius. He was a war hero, the commander of Iran's feared Quds Force, responsible for secretive foreign operations. He wasn't well known in the United States, but he was one of the most powerful figures in the Middle East, sometimes even touted as a possible future leader of Iran. For America, though, General Soleimani was a problem.
But of course, that was a period when he was helping Iraq go after the same enemy that we eventually helped Iraq defeat.
And we stopped him. And I don't think anybody can complain about it.
The responsibility is on the administration to prove to us that by taking out the second most powerful political figure inside Iran, they are preventing more attacks rather than inspiring additional attacks. The reason that the Bush administration and the Obama administration did not greenlight the execution of Qasem Soleimani, despite the fact that he was carrying out attacks on U.S. forces, is because they believed ultimately that would get more Americans killed. And you can already see the consequences to U.S. security in the region with, as you have noted, the beginning of the process to expel American forces from Iraq.
We know that there was some notification given to Congress. You heard Senator Rubio say he knew what the threat was but couldn't share it. Who in Congress actually knows what happened?
So my understanding is that there was no consultation with Congress before this strike. That is in violation of the War Powers Act, and there has been very limited communication since then. I would hope that we will get a full briefing. But that briefing not only has to talk about the intel behind the attack, but why it was absolutely necessary to take this dramatic escalatory step. We do not generally execute high-level political figures of sovereign nations, in part because we know that that opens a Pandora's box that may expose American officials to assassination, but also because we know that ultimately that might get more Americans killed, as it likely will.
The administration had designated the part of the IRGC that Soleimani ran as a terror group, which is the sort of the cover that you heard Secretary Pompeo refer to in saying he was a terrorist as well. That argument doesn't hold up to you.
Well, he does not have authorization from Congress to go to war with Iran, and this potentially sets us on a course to do just that. Listen, this administration's Iran policy has been a disaster from the very beginning. Iran is more powerful today than at the beginning of the Trump administration. They've restarted the nuclear program. They have more influence in places like Yemen and in Syria, and now they are on the verge of launching potentially disastrous strikes against the United States. That is a disaster from the the beginning to the end of this administration's policy towards Iran.
Iran's 70 million Shia Muslims share a religious bond with more than 20 million Shia in Iraq, who make up more than half the population here. When ISIS overwhelmed the Iraqi army and swept through the mainly Sunni northwest of the country in 2014, Iraq's top Shia cleric issued a fatwa making it a religious duty to defend the homeland.
ومن هنا فإن على المواطنين الذين يتمكنون من حمل السلاح عليهم التطوع للانخراط في القوات الأمنية.
This call to arms was immediately answered by tens of thousands of new recruits. Equipped and advised by Iran, those volunteers joined with existing militias. By decree from the Iraqi government, they then became the Popular Mobilization Forces, or PMF. We spoke to Muaffaq al-Rubaie, a distinguished politician who ardently supported the US invasion, but has since witnessed Iran's growing dominance in his country.
So do you think the US has allowed this vacuum which Iran has stepped into?
They pulled out irresponsibly, recklessly. When ISIS stormed the 3 provinces in June 2014, we asked for help from the United States of America. We told them that we can see and monitor terrorists coming from Syria crossing the borders to Iraq. Please help us with some airstrike. President Obama said no. It took the United States of America 3 months to start bombing the terrorists in Iraq. 3 months, while it took Iran 24 hours. Truckloads of arms and people to help us defending Baghdad.
You had no option but to turn to Iran.
Absolutely.
At a training camp just outside the city of Kirkuk, a rare glimpse of America's newest problem in Iraq. The Popular Mobilization Forces, PMF for short, Hashd al-Shabi in Arabic. An armed militia, more than 100,000 fighters strong, who helped crush ISIS in Iraq. Many armed, funded, and trained by America's longtime foe, the Islamic Republic of Iran, with no plans to disband.
The PMF has reached a place where no one can stop it, and this is a blow to U.S. interests in the Middle East.
Abu Ali Baik is the face of America's newest problem. A battle-scarred PMF commander committed to God and driven by duty, and in no small measure, revenge. When Baik was a child, Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein, a Sunni Muslim, executed his Shia father. Baik and his family fled to neighboring Iran, the leading Shia power in the region, where they lived for more than a decade. 20 years later, he was back in Iraq fighting ISIS, a terrorist organization many here believe was made up of Sunni remnants of Saddam Hussein's forces and supported, Baik says, by Washington's Sunni Arab allies.
Everyone knows ISIS was manufactured by America's allies in the region. The PMF, backed by Iran, defeated ISIS, so those American allies are not happy.
It was the threat of ISIS in Iraq that spawned the PMF in 2014. With most U.S. forces gone and Iraqi forces too weak to take on ISIS, the Iraqi government called on Iran for help, and Iraq's highest religious authority, Shia cleric Ayatollah Ali Sistani, called for volunteer fighters. Within weeks, armed militias mobilized, backed by Iran.
While the whole world watched as Iraq was collapsing, in fact, it was only Iran that stood with us by providing us moral and material support.
The PMF acknowledged support from Iran. Many fighters say they've traveled there. We heard several speak the Iranian language of Farsi.
We loved Iranians.
But PMF spokesman Haji Jawdad Asif insists they're not beholden to Iran and never use Iranian soldiers.
I think most the people in Europe or in America must not believe these lies. There is no Iranians in Hashd al-Shabi. There is advisors, Iranian advisors.
No Iranian advisor is more revered among the PMF than Major General Qasem Soleimani, a senior commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guard and chief strategist of operations outside Iran's borders. Washington calls him a terrorist whose Shia militias killed American soldiers in Iraq during the U.S. occupation. The PMF says he's a hero, a brilliant tactician who helped save Iraq.
He's dead. And that's a good thing for a lot of countries.
What is it about Major Qasem Soleimani that inspires you and so many other people?
When we see him, because he is brave. We go to the fight, one of us fight like 1,000 soldiers.
It was Soleimani who led many of the PMF brigades in a 3-year ground campaign that overpowered ISIS and eventually set the stage for Iraqi forces to defeat the extremist group in Mosul, its last major stronghold in Iraq. This is the town of Ghayyara, just south of Mosul, the former ISIS stronghold in northern Iraq. Before U.S.-backed Iraqi forces launched an operation to take back Mosul from ISIS, it was the PMF that cleared out ISIS from Ghayyara and many other towns and villages on the outskirts of Mosul. U.S. artillery units positioned on the outskirts of the city pounded ISIS-held areas in Mosul, while U.S. fighter jets provided air support. But PMF leaders say their estimated 20,000 casualties, whose pictures line many Iraqi streets, show who did the real fighting.
The places we liberated were liberated by Iraqi forces. The Americans did not back up the PMF anywhere. They supported some Iraqi special forces by air, but most of the areas were liberated by the PMF.
The Iraqi government credits all members of the coalition with defeating ISIS. But today, it's the Iranian-backed militias that patrol key towns in northern Iraq, seemingly securing what Iran's critics fear most, the so-called Shia Crescent, an Iranian sphere of influence stretching to the Mediterranean.
Why is it the PMU's responsibility, rather than the Iraqi armies, to clear out these houses of IEDs and to find the last ISIS fighters here?
هو خاص بعض القوات كانت هنا هم خونة خانوهم انسحبوا من مناطقهم اجت داعش احتلتهم فانعدمت الثقة بالجيش هنا يؤمنون بالحشد الشعبي أكثر من يعني الجيش والشرطة وما شابه ذلك.
With victory over ISIS, the popular mobilization forces have been embraced by many Iraqis as national heroes. Some militias have recently set up political arms to field candidates in the upcoming parliamentary election. And Iran is using its influence on local media to boost their cause. The possible election of former militia leaders sympathetic to Iranian interests will allow Tehran to consolidate its powers within the Iraqi government. To hear what threat that might pose to the stability of Iraq and the wider region, we met with Iraqi Vice President Ayad Alawi.
How prominent is Iran here?
Really, they want to control Iraq, as they are doing now. They control Iraq. They are interfering in macro and micro levels.
Do you think that Iraq is at risk of becoming a platform for a proxy battle between the US and Iran?
It is already. It is becoming a platform and a theater for conflict. One day between Iran and Turkey, one day between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and the international community will be sucked in gradually. If you take Syria as a pilot project, Russia is sucked into the Syrian issue, America is sucked in, and Europe is sucked in. This region is in a boiling position now.
With Iran now poised to tighten its grip over Iraq, its influence extends across the region. From Iranian troops fighting in Syria to its proxy Hezbollah in Lebanon and its allies Hamas in Gaza and the opposition movement in Bahrain and the Houthis in Yemen.
Iran has not been treating that part of the world or the world itself appropriately. A lot of bad things are happening in Iran.
The White House has now signaled that over 5,000 troops could be staying in Iraq indefinitely.
إنما هذه الحرب كانت حرب باردة ما بين إيران وأمريكا وتحولت إلى حرب ساخنة.
What would happen if the US takes on Iran on Iraqi turf?
Oh my God. It's going to be hell.
Do you think there's a chance that could happen?
By the way, Trump administration is escalating with Iran. The Iranians will not stand and do nothing. My country will pay heavily.
Which means that it's a very difficult situation that you guys are in.
We are between the devil and the deep blue sea.